When he defeated the soldier, another soldier bayoneted him. That's all. Those are one of the grim instances in the that Bataan Death March. That's why I said your statement in the floor does not ring right into our ears.
Well, I mean, let me say to each of you, I apologize for causing offense. I should not have said what I did. I'll share with you the context of the comment I made, because I was not attempting to compare my filibuster to that suffering. It was at the end of what had been nearly 22 hours, and I was thanking the floor staff. You know, there are a number of staff on the Senate floor who had to be there the whole night, and they didn't have a choice on it. And so I had actually put together a list of everyone on the floor staff and all of the police officers and all of the pages and everyone who was forced to stay there all night. And it was in the context of thanking them that I thank them for enduring, and that's when I used the analogy. I was trying to say that they had endured a long period of suffering, not of their choosing, but I understand that comment caused offense, and I apologize. That was not my intention to do so, and in fact my intention was to thank them for their service, is what I was trying to say. But let me say to each of you, I thank you for your service. You know, I mean, I will tell you, listen, I come from a family that has experienced suffering. My father in Cuba was imprisoned and tortured. My aunt in Cuba was imprisoned and tortured savagely. So I likewise come from a family that has experienced the atrocities that one man can inflict on another. And it was not my intention to make light of it or to suggest, and indeed in the course of the filibuster many times I made a point that, listen, our here talking is nothing compared to the suffering people all over this country are having when they're struggling to feed their kids, to provide for their families. And so it was not my intention to cause offense, and I want you to hear from me personally and directly that apology. With regard to the specific legislation you raised, I mean, we're certainly happy to take a look at the pieces of legislation and to analyze them on their own merits, and assuming they are legislation that we would support, and we'd want to look at them and see what specifically they're doing. But, you know, I can tell you it is a real passion of mine standing up and defending the men and women of the military and the men and women who have served. I thank you for your service, for your son's service. That has been a passion of mine for a long time. It's the reason that I serve on the Senate Armed Services Committee, is because particularly in Texas, with such a large military presence in Texas, it's important for a Texan to be on that committee. And we have viewed my predecessor in this office, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, over the decades built a reputation as a ferocious defender of the men and women of the military, and that is a legacy I very much intend to work hard to continue. And in fact, I'll tell you, before I was in the Senate, one of the things I was very proud of is that repeatedly I represented the American Legion and the VFW and veterans pro bono for free in litigation. In one instance, defending the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial that stands in California to remember the men and women who gave their lives in World War I. And that memorial was ordered taken down by a federal court, and I represented the American Legion and the VFW before the US Supreme Court and did so for free, and we won a 5-4 victory upholding that monument. Likewise, I also represented the American Legion another time, suing the VA because the VA had implemented a policy where at the funerals of those who lost their lives defending our nation, they were prohibiting volunteers from saying to the grieving families, "God bless you." And they had put in place a rule that you were not allowed to say "God bless you," that a volunteer was not allowed to say that. And so I was very proud to represent the American Legion suing the VA, and ultimately the VA settled and changed their policy and said, we're not going to gag volunteers who are comforting the families of those who are grieving, and we're not going to prohibit them from saying "God bless you." So fighting for the men and women of our military as best I can in the Senate is a passion of mine. It is a commitment that has been a commitment, and I can tell you I intend for it to continue to be a commitment going forward. And so I'm very glad you had an opportunity to meet with Jeremy. Jeremy is our military legislative assistant, and so his responsibility in particular is to focus on issues impacting the military. And so I would encourage you to continue to work with Jeremy on the particular issues that y'all are focused on and how we can work together. And I will, I will make a commitment to you on this front, which is that on issues on which we are standing together side by side, I don't think you will find someone who is more tenacious in this body. And actually, your service as a chaplain.
Yes, I stayed on it almost 4 years ago.
I'm reminded of
assigned different places.
Just recently the Air Force chaplain in Alaska, who was reprimanded for writing in a blog post that there are no atheists in foxholes. And he was forced to take that down and publicly reprimanded, and I have been quite vocal speaking out on his behalf. And indeed, in the National Defense Authorization Act, there were 2 amendments, one of which I introduced, the other of which I co-sponsored, both directed at religious liberty for chaplains and for the men and women of the military, not to restrict the